People often cry about being a Democrat, so I got Grandma's computer here and want to show you how easy it is to donate money to Democrats. Click, see how easy that is? Nana gives me chocolate. Click, who's got squishy cheeks? Click, more money for libs. Click. Wait, what is this pop-up? Suspicious activity? Account frozen? Oh crap. I think I'm going to be sick.
Yeah, I'm gonna jump out the window now.
Chairman Whatley, congratulations. You must be beaming. You are in a stronger position against the DNC than at any time, I think, in my lifetime for an RNC chairman. So again, congratulations. How'd you do it, Mr. Chairman?
Well, look, I think we have a focus right now in terms of our donor base and supporters all across the country that are watching the president deliver every single day. They're watching Congress pass the big, beautiful bill. And they're seeing wins, right? The economy is starting to tick up. We're seeing unemployment down. We're seeing wages are up. Every indicator that we need to see in terms of the economy is getting where it needs to go. The border has been 100% secured. And we are now, once again, the strongest, nation on the face of the earth. So the president is keeping his promises, which is a very positive thing. And at the RNC, our focus is making sure that we're in a position to win the midterms. And in order to do that, number one, you got to have a president who's delivering, and we do. And number two, you got to make sure that we have the resources that are going to be in place. So very excited that we have Vice President Vance as our finance chair, which has been tremendously helpful in terms of the events and conversations that we've been having around the country. But we're going to keep our eye on the ball. And, we're very excited about having a cash on hand advantage over the Democrats. But we know at the end of the day, they're going to have a ton of money. They just do. Teachers unions will always bring a ton of money. New York and California will always bring a ton of money. So we're going to make sure that we're putting together what we can in terms of our investments in the election cycle. But whether we win or lose is really going to rely on the environment that we're running in. And that's being set by President Trump every single day right now.
And that's obviously the numbers don't lie. The scoreboard doesn't lie. We have actually the cash advantage right here, and we have the receipts, and it's just very impressive. And a huge congratulations to you, who's been operating very efficiently, but very much under the radar, just like doing the actual hard work. This is something that we posted that went thermonuclear viral, and I just got to get your take on it, Mr. Chairman, which is that the defunding of USAID directly leads to the Democrat coffers being completely empty and Democrats now begging for potential lines of loans from major banks. I'm wondering, do you see any connection there with the potential money laundering through ActBlue, which is now under criminal investigation?
I will just say I am so happy that we do have investigations underway on ActBlue right now. The concerns that we have seen raised about voters or donors, through ActBlue who had no idea that they had been making donations through ActBlue. We need to take that very seriously. We've got 9 different state attorneys general that are looking into it, as well as now the Department of Justice is opened up a probe onto ActBlue. So that does really truly matter. But what I look at when I see the lay of the land politically and where it lands with donations is the Democrats right now are marching off a left-facing cliff. They truly are right now the most radical party that we've ever seen, major party, anytime in the United States of America. They have doubled down on the same failed policies that they had from the 2024 election cycle. They are open borders. They are inflationary spending. They're anti-Semitic. They are a weak America party right now. And I'm not surprised that their donors are starting to walk away. When you have leaders like Whoopi Goldberg and Jasmine Crockett and AOC and Zoran Mamdani and Bernie Sanders, that is not going to inspire a lot of confidence that they can win elections, which is obviously going to have a dramatic impact on the donations that they take in.
These are gifts. And here's the article, by the way. Inside of chaos, swirling through the DNC, desperate for cash. Apparently, they're begging for money. They're begging for loans. And now, right after the ActBlue investigation began, this is anecdotal, Mr. Chairman, but I just got to ask, since you are a bit of a master at this, there's a guy on my street with Parkinson's, and he's not, I mean, he's just an old timer, and he's lived as a Republican his entire life. And he asked me to go check his name in this database because he was reading about this ActBlue stuff. And it turns out that he's been donating a bunch to Democrats, just little amounts in his name and his address in the state of Kansas. And he's never even been to Kansas. You know, this is identity theft. This is fraud. This is like open fraud that is egregious. Perhaps you have more insight into how this happens since you do it on a regular basis. And just from my perspective, this seems like one of the biggest crimes in American political history.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I'm so happy that we do have these different state attorneys general that are taking a look into this. You know, the first time that we really kind of saw documentation on this was in Virginia, where you had, you know, a lady, you know, under similar circumstances who had been making thousands of donations. And when a reporter went up and asked, you know, hey, have you been making these donations? Said, I don't know what you're talking about. And you know, I'm very glad that the attorney general there, Jason Miyares, was very willing to take this seriously and take a good look at it. You know, we need to get to the bottom of this. And I'm very glad that the president has ordered the Department of Justice to open up that investigation and see kind of where this thing goes. And in the meantime, we're going to continue to focus on making sure that we're hitting our marks on the Republican side of the aisle so that we're ready. You know, right now, we need to be building out our infrastructure on election integrity. We need to be filing the lawsuits that we're filing to make sure that we have the right rules of the road in place before voting starts. We need to make sure that we're in a position to recruit and train the thousands of volunteers that we're going to be needing to make phone calls, to knock on doors, and to serve as poll workers and observers when we go into those 26 midterm elections.
Mr. Chairman, there's something that I wanted to ask you, and I think I'll just tie the past to the present and then to the future here with your gold standard in election integrity. Now, it started off in North Carolina, where you're from, and then you brought it nationally as the RNC chairman, and you promised that we would have a fair election. And of course, I think that there's voter fraud in every election, but there was not voter fraud at scale in this election, and it was wonderful to see. Could you please talk about your strategy in order to secure the election in 2016? I'm sorry, in 2024, and then how are you going to advance that in 2026?
Yeah, it's a three-step program, right? You know, number one, we've got to have the right rules of the road in place before voting starts. You know, only American citizens can vote. That's a federal law. The states need to enforce it. We need to make sure we have voter ID in place. We need to make sure that states are cleaning up the voter rolls. You know, that's another federal requirement that the states have to implement. And for the states that have mail-in balloting, we want basic protections in place, right? So, you know, a witness requirement, a signature requirement, mailboxes, not drop boxes. And we want all those ballots in before election day. So those are the things that we're building out right now in every state. And we focused real hard last year on the battleground states, making sure that we were getting those rules of the road in place and working with governors, working with, you know, boards of elections, working with secretaries of states, and going to court. You know, we filed 150 plus lawsuits last year just on election integrity alone. So we're going to get those rules of the road in place nationwide. Number two, you have to be in the room, right? We need Republican poll workers, poll judges, observers, and lawyers. Anytime a vote is cast or counted, I want them in the room. And so we went out, Laura Trump, Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, Matt Whitaker, and I on the National Election Integrity Tour last year recruited 230,000 volunteers, 6,500 attorneys. And in every battleground state, we were in the room. And the third part, which is very important, is you got to talk about it. You have to let everybody know, because if we have 2%, 3%, 5% of Republicans who say, you know what, my vote's not going to count, it's going to get canceled by cheating, I'm not going to mess with it, and they stay home, that guarantees that we lose. So we need every Republican to have faith that the system is being worked and that we are going to be there to protect that vote. The flip side is we wanted to serve notice to everybody on the other side that if you cheat or you help somebody else cheat, we will find you and we will prosecute you to the fullest extent of the law. So we felt very good about having this program in place and casting it out and making sure that everybody knew that we were in place. And God knows there's nobody better than Laura Trump, who, you know, and myself would go out there every day and put these messages out on the street to serve notice. And so we felt that we had a fundamentally better environment from an election integrity perspective last cycle. That's exactly what we need to do this year. And I really want to expand it from just those battleground states where we are investing time, energy, and resources nationwide. So I've gone to every state party across the country and said, you have to put this program in place. We will help you. We will provide resources. We'll provide training. But, I want this in place in Hawaii. I want it in place in Maine. I want it in Florida. I want it in every state in between, just so that we can make sure that in, a state legislative race that's going to be decided by a couple dozen votes, or even a congressional race that's going to be decided by a few hundred votes. Those races are going to matter, and we need to make sure we have this type of a program in place everywhere across the country.
Mr. Chairman, Scott Presler, you made a lot of news by changing course and working with Scott Presler. And one of his key issues has been that swing state of Pennsylvania, which was, of course, the keystone to President Trump's victory. And that state has some remarkable news out in voter registration. You have been doing incredible work there. And I know that the RNC has a friendly partnership with Scott Presler. But I think is it the closest it's ever been ever to having party parity now? A deficit of millions from Democrat to Republican has been now totally zeroed out. Can you give us an update on Pennsylvania and Republican
Yeah, look,
voter
I think that's absolutely critical. And we're seeing it not just in Pennsylvania, but let's talk about Pennsylvania for a second, because you're right that we've gone from hundreds of thousands to the deficit to over to where we are today with getting close to parity. And it really, truly matters, right? And so we're seeing Democrats are leaving the Democratic Party by the tens of thousands just because the Democratic Party, frankly, has left them. And so we're seeing a huge uptick in terms of independent votes, but we're also seeing an uptick in terms of Republican votes. And that is the direct result of a lot of effort that's being put onto the ground. Folks like the Sentinel Action Fund, folks like Scott Presler, the Pennsylvania GOP, all working in concert all day, every day to try and make sure that we're doing it. But it's not just Pennsylvania. In North Carolina, when I took over as the state party chair, it was a 250,000 vote deficit. Today, it's basically tied. We're seeing shifts in Michigan. We're seeing shifts in Wisconsin, all across the country, because people are just completely disillusioned by the Democratic Party's relentless march to the left. The fact that they're focusing harder on protecting violent, criminal, illegal aliens and putting, boys in girls' sports and men and women's locker rooms than they are on their own constituent interests is a great reason to see that people are leaving that Democratic Party. But we need to hit our marks. As a Republican Party, we need to make sure that we're putting a solution on the table that people want to sign up for, that they want to be there. That's President Trump and the America First agenda. It's him being a common sense candidate and us being a common sense party, because that way people say, you know what, I'm not just going to be an independent. I'm going to go and actually register as a Republican.
Border state of New Jersey defied you and led to a lawsuit. I know there's some people speculating that New Jersey could be flipped red potentially. But here's the information about a lawsuit from the RNC against New Jersey. And I wanted to talk about this because there's a lot of speculation that potentially New Jersey could be a red state. Do you see that, Mr. Chairman?
Look, I think we've got a great opportunity there. The people of New Jersey are ready for change, and Jack Ciattarelli is an absolutely great change agent. He lost by 3.5 points 4 years ago. President Trump brought it into low single digits in the election last cycle. And the people of New Jersey are very unhappy. They've got the highest taxes in the country. They're ranked 49th out of 50 in competitiveness right now. Their schools are failing. Their roads are crumbling. And they really, truly are not getting the bang for their buck that they need to as taxpayers in New Jersey. And they're ready for a change, And so, Jack, and I spent some time up in New Jersey with him just last week. He is ready to be that change agent. He's ready to bring some sanity to Trenton and make sure that they get that state turned around. When you talk about the lawsuit, we went to New Jersey and we said very simply, it is a federal law that you clean up your voter rolls every year. When is the last time you did it? And what are you doing this year to clean up your voter rolls? And we heard nothing. We sent them a follow-up letter, nothing. We sent them a third letter, nothing. We sent them a fourth letter, nothing. So that's why we've gone ahead and done two things. We filed a lawsuit basically saying they need to comply and they need to let us know what they're doing. But most importantly, they need to clean up their voter rolls. Mm-hmm. The second thing we did is we sent a letter to the Department of Justice and said, hey, they're violating federal law. You need to go ahead and open up an investigation and make sure that you bring the power of the federal government into New Jersey and make sure that they comply with that federal law and clean up the voter rolls.
Yes. So that we don't see something like this. I mean, that we have it. We have it. This was from 2024. We've seen these graphs before, Mr. Chairman. You were the only state in 2020 that prevented a graph like this in North Carolina.
Yeah.
Now here it is all over again. 2024, dark of night, the black of night. Suddenly there is a parabolic jump up in the votes, and just barely they're able to scrape through a Democrat senator out of that state, a critical Democrat senator, by the way. That Democrat Senate seat is something that prevents so much of the Trump administration from getting what they need with 51 votes in the Senate. So it's absolutely critical that you do this. Do you see graphs like this, Mr. Chairman, and just like scratch your head like the rest of us?
We do, angry? And it is really something, for us that you've got to be in the room. I think, when we talk about, putting the lawyers and the observers in the room anytime a vote is counted, this is what you're trying to prevent, and we just want to make sure that those late night dumps, that we are covering it. And when we do, we tend to see, better results, and I'll give you one example of this in Milwaukee. Last year, votes are being counted. And one of our observers who was in the room noticed that the security protocols on one of the machines were not in place. So he cried foul. We brought in the lawyers. They shut everything down. They took all those ballots out of the machine. They reset the protocols, and then they went ahead and ran, those ballots back through the machine. That's the type of things that we want to make sure that we're in the room catching that, because I think if you catch the honest mistakes, you can help prevent the dishonest mistakes.
That's right. Just very quickly looking into the future, there are, I believe it's 26 Democrat seats that represent districts that Trump won. It's a pretty remarkable map for 2016. How are you going to go get those seats, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, 13 seats that President Trump carried. Democrats have the seat. There are 3 that Kamala Harris won where Republicans are holding those seats. That 16 really is the center of the bullseye for us. And, the passage of the big, beautiful bill is a great thing for us because when you look at extending the Trump tax cuts, 75% approval. When you look at no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime, 75% approval. When you look at, the national security provisions in that bill, 70% approval. Unleashing American energy, 65% approval. So we now have every one of those Democrats voting against all of these popular provisions. We're going to go have a conversation with the voters and say, hey, this is the agenda you voted for. This is this guy going to Washington and voting against it. You need to vote him out. So we're going to be very aggressive in the election cycle of going after those folks for the votes that they're taking, because every single one of them, they're following Hakeem Jeffries. They're following Chuck Schumer. They're following, frankly, Zoran Mamdani and Whoopi Goldberg, who are the new leaders of the Democratic Party. But they're not voting in their constituents' interests. And we're going to have that conversation from now through next November.
Can you admit to us here that Zoran Mamdani is an op and that you're like, that secretly he's an op by the by some splinter cell of the Republican Party?
President Trump may be that smart. I wish I was.
I know.
It is unbelievable. This guy is a gift that keeps on giving. And the Democrats really want to try and serve him up on a platter for us because they keep meeting with him and they keep kissing the ring and they keep saying, oh, my God, look at this guy. He's exactly what we need as the Democratic Party. And he goes right in there with Jasmine Crockett and AOC and Bernie Sanders. They're trying to resurrect, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. Look, every single leader the Democratic Party has right now is basically saying we are going to go 100% progressive, 100% woke, 100% radical. We're going to be open borders, inflationary spending, and a weak America. That's not what the American people want, particularly in these battleground districts that we were just talking about.
Mr. Chairman, he says that he wants to tax white people more. He says it on his website, and he doesn't even apologize for it. They didn't scrub it. He doubled down. He says, I want to tax white New Yorkers more, and that's my platform. And, that's patently illegal. We asked Harmeet Dillon about it, but he's pushing forward on that. It's wild, man. It's a gift, I think, to the Republican Party.
I do think it's a gift. I think it's one that we have to go ahead and take advantage of, and we need to have those conversations. Donald Trump did such an amazing thing in the last election cycle by just simply declaring himself the common sense candidate and talking to the voters about the issues that they cared about and putting solutions on the table. And every Republican candidate from one end of this country to the other needs to do the same thing in the 26 campaign, because the Democrats are not listening to the voters right now. We have an opportunity, and midterms are always very, very tough for the party that has the White House. But we have an opportunity here because the Democrats are so far off the page that if we listen to our voters and we listen to the constituents and we put solutions on the table, we're going to be in a chance to defy history and really, be able to expand our majorities in the House and the Senate.
I thank you for your generous time. I pray you'll allow me, just since we're talking about it, one more question about AOC. She is leading the pack for the 2028 Democratic nomination for president. What say you to AOC and potentially Vice President Zoran Mandami?
If I could write a check to those candidates, I would do it, but I just can't. But it is absolutely remarkable to see that this is where the Democratic Party wants to go. And it may work in New York, it may work in San Francisco, it may work in Chicago. But when you talk about the battleground states like Arizona, Nevada, North Carolina, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan, it's not. I mean, that is not where those voters want to be. They want a thriving economy. They want to shut down the southern border the way that President Trump has. They want America to be the strongest country on the face of the earth. And what AOC is going to bring to the table on the Democratic side of the aisle is going to ensure that they have a permanent minority. And God bless her for leading the charge.
That's the quote from the stream. God bless AOC. If I could write her a check, I would, says the RNC chairman. You should follow the RNC chairman, by the way. Here's Michael Walley's X account. He's so close to 100,000 subscribers, and I cannot encourage you enough. Get in there and follow the chairman. He is doing remarkable things for the party. He's a humble man, and he's somebody who operates quietly and so effectively as most of the quiet operators do. Here's the RNC's page as well. It has 3.4 million subscribers. You should follow that too. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Godspeed.
It's great to be on with you, sir. Have a great day.
All right.